Hello, Tom Lavecchia here with the latest edition of the Armchair NBA. This is episode number 2 of the newly launched show, and I have a very special guest today. Let me introduce him. His name is Gator McCluskey. He has a YouTube channel. He's originally from New York by way of now Tampa Bay, correct?
Tampa, Florida. Yeah.
Tampa, Florida.
Yep.
And not a growing channel. I'm going to put a link. Make sure you sub. But more importantly, I came across his review of the Many Saints at Newark. Let's jump right into it. Gator McCluskey, how you doing today?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me.
So it's my pleasure. And we have an audience that really knows the Sopranos. They really know their mob stuff. So let's first, just before we get into the Many Saints, like we were talking earlier, give us a little background about you and what kind of got you into reviewing movies.
Just like a lot of people, just been a huge movie fan for my whole life. Always wanted to be a film director, but had kids early, and it kind of weakened my my guts and going out to the West Coast. So through the years, I've tried to stay creative. And then COVID hit, and I decided, what am I going to do? Locked indoors, and I came up with the idea of maybe I'll start reviewing movies, not knowing that movies were going to stop playing in theaters, of course. So early on, I was able to hit a few before it got too crazy. And then I kind of branched off because there were no movies to review. I kind of branched off into my other obsession, which is that of Burt Reynolds. So you'll notice that on my channel, a lot of my content is Burt Reynolds, and I'm working on a Burt Reynolds documentary, long form documentary.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and that's I'm on chapter 6 now, and each one is anywhere from like 30 to 40 minutes, and it's a real in-depth deep dive about the career of Burt Reynolds.
He was Smokey and the Bandit, right?
Oh yeah, Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, Deliverance. He's near and dear to my heart. I got to meet him a few years before he died, and it was
you met him. That was a big deal, no?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Love it.
An incredible man for me growing up. I'm 52, so I kind of grew up right around Smoking the Bandit when I was impressionable, and and it just grabbed me. And my brother had a Trans Am, so I was like,
yeah,
I was all about that.
With the Firebird on it, right?
Oh yeah, man, absolutely.
All right, so were you okay? Let's roll into Many Saints. Were you like a Sopranos guy? Did you have to catch up on it? First, let's set up a little stage there.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a Sopranos nut. I watched the series when it aired. I was that guy, like a lot of us, that Monday morning water cooler after an episode aired, we all hang around and talk about it for hours until the boss yelled and said, "Get back to work." It was just an absolute obsession of mine. As a matter of fact, at the time, I worked in the DVD aspect of the business, and I would record it on HBO, and then I would make copies and I'd give it out to all my buddies, and then we'd watch it every night and talk again nights during the week about that episode from that week.
Wow.
And it's pretty crazy if you think about the whole the fact that people binge watch things now, but back when The Sopranos aired, you'd have to wait an entire week to see what happened, and a lot of times you're so disappointed. You're always like, oh no, nobody got whacked this week. This stuff that you'd hear, that you laugh at people that binge watch it for the first time. They don't have to make those sort of comments. They get all the information in short term. So I've probably seen the whole series 20 times straight through. Wow. I kid you not, through the years. I tend to watch it at least once, twice a year. Wow. I just cannot get enough of every little detail, within it. So awesome. Yeah.
Well, so this is even more of a meaningful review. You're not like a casual, like, hey, I just saw this. Let me go ahead and review.
Oh no.
But so what's interesting enough is, if I remember correctly, you opted to actually go to the movie theater, correct?
Oh yeah, opening day.
Okay.
I'm a big believer in, certain movies need to be seen on the big screen. As a matter of fact, I'm just wrapping up a review right now, the new James Bond movie, which is another passion of mine. I probably actually will drop that probably tomorrow. Awesome. And so opening day for me on a lot of these movies, and the big screen, as soon as the theaters reopened, I was right back in. I'm not,
love it.
You know, I did the COVID thing. I spent a week in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
I was I'm definitely somebody who's cautious, but not cautious enough to stay away from, the hot box of a movie theater, which is probably the worst place to go. It's not going to keep me out of there.
Well, one, I'm glad you're okay. Number two, listen, freedoms are important, and I'm glad. I know Florida's been very flexible in terms of business environment, so that's great. All right, so let's roll right in, man. So what were you expecting, and then let's jump right into the review.
Yeah, so when I went in, I had done my research, almost too much. Knowing the characters, knowing what they were trying to do. I think the biggest thing going in that was sort of something I was leery of was the fact that David Chase, who, this was his brainchild, obviously, really wanted to direct this thing. And due to family issues, he had to back out. And that was crushing.
Oh, he didn't direct it?
He did not direct it. No, he actually turned it over to this director, Alan Taylor, who he directed 9 episodes of The Sopranos. Good episodes, very good episodes, just not, there are a lot of directors over the course of the 6 seasons that, could have done it. Problem with Alan Taylor is he's never really directed a great feature film. He did the second Thor movie, which is terrible. He did, what was the other film he did that's going to escape me right now?
So he's a little green.
Yeah, Terminator Genesis. Well, they give him the keys to a big franchise in Terminator, and he screwed that one up, So it's so I was like, he didn't have now he's a great television director. He did Boardwalk Empire, he did Nurse Jackie, he did Mad Men. So he's done some really good stuff. But feature films are different than television, even the quality of television nowadays. So I was skeptical going in. I was worried about that. I was worried about, the Dicky Moltisanti story, which, Christopher's, before we continue, where do we stand on spoilers? Because I want to.
No. So at this point, if you watched it or not watched it, if you didn't watch it, which most of the guys did, if you didn't watch it, pause now, because we're going raw here. Listen, we're down and dirty. A lot of people that watch this channel are like what they call those mobologists, if you will. These guys know this stuff inside and out. So I'm dying to hear your take on the review. And then I'm loving to hear it. Be respectful in the comments, because you may disagree with you guys, but we're always going to be respectful in the comments. So continue.
Right on. Going in, I knew that, Michael Gandolfini had big shoes to fill in his father. I was concerned about that. But I think the thing I was most concerned about was the fact that the story revolved around Dicky Moltisanti, Christopher's father, because although it seemed interesting, I was worried that guy was going to be good enough, because I know the actor not really well, but then again, we really didn't know James Gandolfini well. So when we saw The Sopranos, we were like, who is this guy? And then we grew to love him, but
you think he carried a Jersey 60s, late 60s mobster well?
I think he did okay, but the problem is to me, he couldn't carry the film. And I really liked the film.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that it in any way, shape, or form stood up to The Sopranos in what The Sopranos was, especially on a comedic level. If you look at the Sopranos series, I find it to be almost a comedy first and then a drama second. True. Because there's so much in it that is really dark humor, hilarious. I mean, I always look back to the scenes in the Pine Barrens when they're talking on the cell phone and it's all broken up, and Paulie thinks that Tony's telling him that the guy's he says he's an interior decorator, right? Because he thinks he hears something else, and then he tells Christopher, and Christopher goes, interior decorator, his house looks like shit, and it's like, those lines are so great, and there was none of that in the film. But I would imagine that the argument from David Chase and Alan Taylor, the filmmakers, would be, this is a feature, it's not that TV show. And but you're still using all these characters, you're still calling it a Sopranos story, you got to have that flavor in there. And there was some of it.
Yeah.
I was just kind of sort of taken aback that it wasn't enough. And again, the main thing for me was Dickie Moltisanti just wasn't strong enough a character and a presence like Tony. When Tony comes on screen, he just lights up every scene he's in. You're drawn to him. You know, he's a powerful man. He's big, he's intimidating. And he's unpredictable.
He's Jersey.
Yeah, man. And Dickie was not unpredictable. He was very sort of predictable to me, you know. Well, I give the guy a lot of credit, you know, huge shoes to fill. But
let me ask you this. I kind of, in terms of Dickie, right? So hear about him kind of along the way, right? And obviously, you know, unfortunately, we have people pass in our life, especially as you get older. And some people tend to like kind of get idolized because they're not around anymore, right? Oh my God, your Uncle Dickie. And like, he's like one of those guys that like, you ever like super look forward to meet somebody and they're almost like a legend. And then you meet them and you're kind of underwhelmed. That's kind of where I landed with Dickie and his character. I was super excited about that thread. And I kind of got what they were trying to do, but they lost on the execution. What are your thoughts on that? And what thoughts on my opinion on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, there were definitely aspects of the storyline that I could have saw, you know, taking off, you know, and I've heard David Chase say in interviews that that he was an open book to him. Like he didn't have the backstory. And he loved the fact that he could create that backstory.
Correct.
You know, as opposed to like, you know, you take The Godfather, right? When they went back in time, you know, they knew the story, you know, it was all sort of drawn out.
Correct.
George Lucas with the Star Wars series, he knew the whole story. He just hadn't told it yet. Correct. This was an untold story. This was basically all new. So they sat down in a room and they chalked it up, and that's what we got. And I think it's also a little disappointing that they had all this extra time through COVID that they probably could have, and this goes for a lot of these movies that are coming out. They could have really dug in deep. Now, I personally believe that if David Chase would have directed the movie like he had planned, that perhaps he would have taken it to a point where he would have made a left turn or a right turn, as opposed to Alan Taylor, who took it and said, well, this is the script, I'm just going to go with it. And I think that's the case with a lot of filmmakers. And I study, you know, like the way that like James Cameron, for example, he reclaimed the Terminator franchise that he lost after Terminator 2. He basically divorced the producer who he was married to, and he lost the franchise. And it took him decades to get it back. Well, he finally got it back, and he was going to direct a new Terminator movie, but he was locked up in the Avatar project. So he turns it over to the director of Deadpool, this guy, Tim Miller. Well, Tim Miller, now it's Tim Miller's baby, right? Now Cameron can only step in so much. He wants, out of respect, he hired this guy. He wants to let him do it. And the movie was awful. It was awful. But I believe that if Cameron would have made it, he would have seen how awful it was, and he would have taken that turn. And that's kind of my fear with what had happened. But the good news is that David Chase apparently is very excited about doing another story, because that's another thing I guess we could bounce into is where's all the other story, right? We want to find. I mean, I was just talking to a buddy of mine the other day. He's like, what about Hesh? You know, like, you know, where's he? You know, like where's all these younger characters? You know, where's Carmine Lubitasi? Where are these guys? Well, we'd love to see. Why did Jackie Aprile become boss over Tony? Right? You want to see that story. I want to see that story.
Correct.
That's what we want to see next, you know. Agreed. And now if David Chase gets his chance, because I heard him say, I was looking forward to so much directing my first feature film. It would have been his first feature film, mob film, on the big screen and sit in a theater with people and watch it. That was his dream. And he lost out on that. So he's going to do this movie, and he's going to direct the next one. I'm positive.
So let's all right. So I want to kind of go through some specifics, because I want to kind of get your opinions. I saw your review, and I want our audience to kind of check it out. So Silvio Dante, right? It was a little comedic, kind of a comedy relief, little stoic, literally acted as the and I don't know if it was you said it or somebody else. You got to forgive me because I watch a lot of the reviews, and a lot of people feel like you kind of get like that, like stiff over your life. You're generally not like that young. So that seemed to me, I felt like, come on, man, you're 28 years old or 25 years old or 18 or whatever the hell age is supposed to be. And I didn't find him being like born stoic. I just thought that was odd.
Yeah.
Where do you land on Silvio's portrayal?
Yeah, I'd like to think you got that from me because I definitely did.
It might have been you.
touch on
Forgive
that.
me if
Yeah.
again I
No,
saw so
no.
many, so forgive me.
Absolutely. I believe me. Actually try to stay away from reviews because I don't want to copy people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a fear of mine that I would ever like,
Yeah.
and I go out of my way, not to do any reviews. But
Yeah.
yeah, so basically my point was, and I played clips of Silvio and I played clips of this guy.
Yeah.
And you would think that over time, and we all know people that as they
Yeah.
get older, their quirks, they get more amplified,
Yeah.
like your tick, whether your ticks or clerk, so you would imagine that the version of Silvio we saw in The Sopranos was as character animated,
Yeah.
quirky that you could get in life.
Yeah.
And that as a kid, it would have been like a piece of it, and it would have gotten worse as we went along. And it almost seemed like the guy that played Silvio, and I don't blame him at all, because a lot of people are like, that guy sucked, that guy this. It's the director, it's the director's job to actually say to him, let's do it again, maybe a little less, And Michael Gandolfini was actually
excited about, yeah,
he was told to back it down. He did too much of his father. He was doing a character of his father, and apparently they told him to tone it down. They had to reshoot a lot of his scenes after they went, into dailies and looked at him.
Wow.
So yeah, I do think that he definitely overboard.
But something started to cut you off. But something struck out, and this is kind of the reason why I asked you on too. Is Michael Gandolfini, lost his father, and I think you might have. I lost my father when I was 17, and I think you said something along those lines as well. And you said this movie, if there was a bright spot, will resonate with guys like us who lost people young, because imagine like he's filling his father's shoes. So if you could talk a little bit about that angle, well, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable with it.
No, yeah, it's fascinating to watch interviews with Michael Gandolfini, and listen to his thought process about how, it seemed as though, which, it wasn't as difficult for him to do as I think a lot of people thought, because he knew that his dad was playing a character, and he was studying that. Yeah. And he never watched The Sopranos until
they asked him to, which is insane. Yeah, which is insane.
Especially to have to power watch it, like for him to have to go to school on it. Now, the really interesting thing I heard him say recently was that he believed that, just like with the Silvio character, he ignored the last 3 seasons of The Sopranos. He did not. He watched them once, but he
like a lot of us. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. Well,
just kidding.
But he focused on the first 2 or 3 seasons, and that's the Tony Soprano that he wanted to emulate in his performance, because he felt that his father had evolved to like another character toward the end, and he didn't think that that was good for him to watch too much of that, because it would affect the young version of Tony. So
the opposite of Silvio. Now, why? So what? Now, again, you have, and we'll get to the positive, because I know you think you had a net positive review. But a few things I want to touch on. Why wasn't there more of Michael Gandolfini? I think that could have possibly saved it. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I don't know if I had to guess, I'd say that it was maybe one of 2 things. Maybe they didn't have the confidence in Michael being so young, being so inexperienced, that they wanted to sort of ease him into it.
Maybe mitigate a little bit.
With the understanding that he's going to be a much larger character moving forward. Yeah. Because, Dickie, spoiler alert, dies at the end of this film. So who else are you going to follow in the next film but Tony? So maybe that's part of it. You hold something back, give somebody something to see. The other thing of it might be an ego thing. it might be David Chase saying, you know what, I'm going to prove that I can do this again. You know, I'm going to prove that I can make a film and I don't have to rely on this character, that I could give you new characters and
because
I can do it.
Because it's me, not them.
Right.
Bill Belichick, Bill Belichick happening.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah,
so
it's, you know.
So Uncle Junior, I thought he was good in terms of the portrayal. What were your thoughts on Uncle Junior's character?
Yeah, he got the biggest laughs for me. You know, his big moment when he falls on the stairs. My theater that I was in just howled out loud laughing, you know, and that was fun to see. And that's the shame about theaters, you know, too, is like there's a reason why you see these things in a theater. And I got to tell you, to be perfectly honest with you, most of the people I know that saw it on HBO Max at home hated it a lot more than the people I know that went to the theater to see it. Oh, wow. Because when you're in the theater to see it, it's uninterrupted, it's dark, the sound is good, the picture's good. You're not getting up to go to the bathroom unless you have to.
The smell of popcorn, you know?
Yeah, you're not pausing it. You're not, you know, you're not doing all these things.
The baby's not crying.
You're not distracted, you know? Yeah. So you're forced to focus on it, you know? And I believe the theater I walked out of, and there was applause at the end. I believe overall that there was more people that loved the movie walking out of it than there were that didn't like it. But then again, I go around to my buddies and they're all like, you know, I didn't like this, I didn't like that. I go, you know what I say is we never thought we were going to get this. This is a gift.
Good point.
We never thought we were going to get a Soprano story. So for me, I was so happy to have something. Okay. Yeah. And I'm even happier to know that we could get something else, because something's better than nothing when you're talking about, for me, my all-time favorite television show of all time, bar none, you know.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I just, so I'm excited about the future of having more stories, you know, because I love mob movies. I mean, I watch The Godfather 1 and 2, you know, religiously once, twice a year, you know, Goodfellas, Casino, those are my go-tos. Yeah. I love The Bronx Tale. I think The Bronx Tale's a beautiful movie. You know, there's a few others that I like, but those are the main ones. Godfather 3, to be honest with you, I try to watch it over and over and over and over, and I just so disappointed with that, more so every time I watch it.
It's funny, it actually grew on me over the years, but that's another discussion.
Did you see Coda, the
I did version? And I saw no difference, and I wasted like $9. I was like, what the frig is going on here? Right. A little embarrassed about that. I'm surprised I admitted that I watched it.
And I knew the differences just because I read, you know, going in, I get all the pre-hype of what they did, and you know, and all the differences. So, but that is what it is. When it's funny, when I was a kid, my father had the Godfather epic. Are you familiar with what that is?
That I'm not sure why that's not everywhere every day playing.
Yeah.
And yes.
So he had this big box set. I think it was 3 tapes, and it basically chronologically puts the Godfather in order. Yeah. And it's a fascinating way to watch it. But the big thing about it is there's like an hour or more.
That's not even as part of the 3.
And what it was is NBC, when they bought the Godfather, they said, okay, we'll give you the money you want, but we want all the extra scenes and we want it to be much bigger. And they got all this stuff. And then recently Cinemax actually aired it, and I recorded it
on TV.
On Cinemax, the entire epic, start to finish. I have a copy of it if you want. I can search it up.
I was gonna say, I love it.
You know, and I watch it both ways. I'm not stuck on either one, but it's very interesting to watch the epic. You know,
well, Don
7.5 hours
when he gets shot, and then now he's in a wheelchair, and that kind of like, obviously you circle back on it on certain situations, but that's amazing. So I why exactly did Junior kill Dickie? Was he was, and again, so obviously it wasn't because he laughed at because he fell. Was it he was worried about him rising higher in the Jersey mob than him, or what was the real reason why Junior killed Dickie?
I don't know, man. I don't pretend to be any expert in mob mentality
Yeah.
because I get all of my education from these dopey movies
Yeah. I got it.
and TV shows. But I actually do think that he was whacked because of him being laughed at. Because you got to remember, if you look at the Sopranos series,
Yeah.
there's some of the crazy shit that happened over the years. Specifically, here's one. So Johnny Sack wanted Ralphie killed. Why? Because he made a joke about his wife.
Yeah.
That's, to me, I'm like, through the years, I've just come to the realization that that's how some of these people think. I mean, they're sociopaths to an extent.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't he kill Dickie over something as simple as, and if you watch that scene closely, they did the slow motion thing. They've got Dickie's face in slow motion laughing, and Junior's on the stairs and he's hunched over and he's like looking at him and this and that. And you see how steamed he is. There's another scene also in the bedroom where I believe so he can't perform in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And it's because of the accident on the stairs. And he shows his anger again about the fact that Dickie was laughing at him. So I personally think that it was 100% that,
Wow. All right, now we don't have to, because it's a new kind of relaunching the podcast. We could talk about anything and everything. We don't have to deep dive into political stuff. The feedback that I got from our viewers is they felt it was a little quote unquote woke, right? Feel free to share as little or as much as you want on that statement. This is an open forum. You will not be judged by me. I might get a little ridiculed in the comments, but where do you land on that, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, I didn't get it's funny you say that because I'm struggling with this James Bond review that I'm wrapping up. Which I do go into that pretty deeply to the point where I almost feel like I might lose some subscribers. And I'm battling with it's probably the only thing that's preventing me from releasing it. Because you got to be careful what you say, and in this day and age, because but it's funny. I look at my YouTube channel and I look at my analytics and I see who's watching my channel, and it's like it's 95% men from the age of like 30 to 60. You know what I mean? And it's
same demographic here. And although I do not take a political poll, I would venture to guess it leans right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just by virtue of the demographic.
Yep. But I don't know. I honestly did not walk out of it too deeply wrapped up in any of that. I did with the Bond movie, man.
I get it. No, listen. Well, so maybe the reason why I guess I didn't pay as much attention to that angle is I think two parts. The first is I went to school in Newark from 94 to 95 to 2000. I went to college right there at night. So Newark at night and weekends. That's where I got my undergraduate. But I worked during the day. So I was there at night, and Newark was not a great place back then in terms of safety. We're at a park, really only had like a 1 block radius where it was safe outside of the air. It wasn't that great at night. I'm just being transparent, right? And when you would drive, there were still neighborhoods that there were burnt down buildings and abandoned buildings still from the riots. So I guess for me personally, I seen firsthand 30 years later at the time, what the riots did to Newark. So when that part and that angle, I guess, not that I was overly empathetic, but I was like, oh, that makes sense. So maybe that's why I didn't like pick up on maybe a possible political angle. And then the second thing is, and we kind of all know this, right? I'm an Italian American, but just like we watch these movies and we always want the Italians to win, or we always want the underdog Italian to win. And in this particular case, the African American gentleman got away with it, and it kind of scot free, right? Well, you can't do that to the mob back then. He never would have made it, And I think, to be honest with you, I was a little frustrated that he made it because I'm that guy too that wants the mob guy to win. But now that I did some mob genre and I did some access to mobsters and interviewed mobsters, they're kind of not good guys, right? So like, and they always don't, and they're not perfect. and it's also not the movies, you know. So sometimes these guys do lose, and they lose pretty hard. So then I'm like, you know, and the reality of it, that might have been realistic. But the one part I did understand, and which I believe you touched on, and forgive me if you didn't, is what was the black character's name? I forget his name that he played.
Oh,
Wasn't
yeah.
I mean, I'm like drawing a blank. Anyway, if you're
Harold.
Harold. The thing I don't get is the character development and the animosity. Dickie was good to him in terms of this situation, right? The mob ruled Newark back then. The mob ruled crime, right? You don't just start a numbers game, right? And I know they were trying to do the Frank Lucas angle, but that wasn't happening, and not back then, not in Newark, right? So with that being said, though, is that guy kind of screwed him, Dickie, right? He screwed Dickie. Why don't you think they developed that a little bit more? Like, why wasn't like he come to his car shop or wherever, and like the girlfriend's there, and maybe he's a dick to him in front of the girlfriend, and he screws her later. Like that just kind of happened too quickly with the girlfriend. I thought it was odd. It was inorganic. And then number two, they just didn't set up that Dickie was an ass to him. Like Dickie was actually kind of good to him. Walk me through that a little bit.
Well, I do have a theory about a lot of that. So first off, David Chase grew up in Newark, right?
Yeah.
And he did say the reason that main reason this story excited him too is he was there for the Newark riots, and like he knew all about it, and that was something that was near and dear to his heart about that story, and it gave him an angle that he wanted to explore.
Yeah.
I can't take credit for this, but a buddy of mine had made he texted me shortly after the movie, and he said specifically, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, as will a lot of people, there's no way that Dickie's Guma would say to him what she had done.
That's
first of all, she would have never done it.
Yeah. That's okay. That'll give that especially back then.
And even if she did it, there's no way she would have told him. So that scene alone was so unrealistic to me. All the other stuff you said, I think, is very simply because of runtime. The movie needed to be either 3 hours long or it needed to be a miniseries, because they jammed it packed with so many different characters and storylines. I mean, there's so much in there that you would love to have known more about Paulie, and you'd love to know his story, and you'd love to know more about Silvio's story. You don't know anything about these guys. They just appear and they are who they are, and I believe that Harold could have his own movie. I really do. I think that his character, because think about how that film ended, because he had basically said that he's going to make his own money.
Yeah.
And he proved that in the end. He was making money, right?
Yeah.
Well, where does that go?
Yeah.
Who is that guy? That's a story to tell. There's, you could have an offshoot movie based on him, or ideally, and I would love to have had a series, because to me, a series is never ending. You don't have to rush it. You could take your time. The nice thing about The Sopranos, when they bring in Richie Aprile, they took their time with him, and then they got rid of him. Then they brought in Ralphie, and they took their time with him, and then they got rid of him. And then you've got Steve Buscemi's character, Tony, the other Tony
Blundetto.
These guys were really fleshed out, and we really got to spend time with them. So when they did get killed, I mean, honestly, when Dickie got killed, I mean, did you feel any emotion?
Yeah, I was not attached to the character, and I'm seeing, and this might be more like on the Italian American side, I'm seeing that a lot of reviewers are almost insulted as Italian Americans, because it kind of made us out to be like kind of buffoons, and kind of made the culture a little buffoony. Do you have any take on that, or I just wondering?
Well, I mean, The Sopranos was always got that flack for doing that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you and I both probably grew up in the same, more or less the same tri-state area,
pretty
and
much,
we all knew people like that. But you can also point out times where where Tony was a great father, and where he was a good guy. There's a reason why we rooted for him, even though he was mostly a terrible guy, but and that's the fascinating thing about rewatching The Sopranos, because I'll focus on certain characters that I never saw certain things, particularly Carmela,
Yeah.
who Edie Falco is just brilliant in that series. And if you focus on her story arc and her struggles with the fact that she's taken all this blood money, and there's that one psychiatrist she sees that basically she makes a point to him about, like, you just want my money, and he's like, no, I'm not charging you for this session. He goes, I refuse to take blood money,
Wow.
He goes, and now you need to do the same thing. You need to pack your bags and get your kids, and you need to leave. And that's the advice you're giving,
Well, I think that, and I'll send you the article. We did I have another magazine that's Jersey based, and they said kind of how Jersey was the Sopranos, and it did focus on like the area and some of the places, and kind of like, was it real and authentic New Jersey? And the truth of the matter, it is, and it was, and it really was emblematic of the Italian American experience in New Jersey, New York, and so forth, where everybody kind of knew somebody, and you grew up a certain way, and things were a certain way, and it was about family, but then it was like contradicting. I remember watching Jersey Boys, and Frankie Valley character is like married, but he's messing around with his grandma, and he mentioned something about like going home or something, and he's like, oh, I gotta get home, and like meanwhile it's his mistress, and she's like, why? He's like, well, it's all about family, but meanwhile you're cheating, so there always has been historically that dichotomy of the Italian Americans experience, some which is true, some which it, and obviously gets amplified in the cinema. All right, so give us kind of your net review, because I took it that you thought it was positive, so give us kind of your net review, and then I guess we'll start a new system at a 5 stars. Feel free to rate it, my friend.
Yeah, no, I like the movie. And I stress in my review that I don't believe it stands up to the quality and the legacy of the Sopranos series, but as a standalone mob movie, I would probably put it somewhere close to Bronx Tale, not quite as good, if anyone's seen the Bronx Tale.
That's a pretty bold.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Did
the
you
Bronx
not like Bronx Tale?
No, I actually really love Bronx Tale.
Okay.
I do. And I love Chaz Palminteri in that. I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
And the fact that he even wrote that and De Niro directed it, the whole storyline in there, the struggle between, that kid, and it's a very similar story if you think about it, because, the best thing to me about The Many Saints of Newark is the way that young Tony Soprano was lost. He didn't want to take the hot speakers that were stolen. He had a conscience, and he still had some morals. And Dickie at first was trying to get him to just forget all that and just try to justify it by saying that, but forget about it tomorrow kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then Ray Liotta, who we didn't talk about, who I thought was magnificent.
From Union, New Jersey, of all places. Let's spend a minute on him before we wrap up.
Oh, he's just incredible. And if for a lot of us that saw the trailers, we saw him in prison.
Yeah.
And then we watched the movie, and he dies early on. And I'm thinking to myself, what happened to the prison shot? I'm like, he's dead? I go, I didn't know that they were going to twist it and make it, which wasn't totally
I thought
clear.
That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought he played both guys so well and so different that, to me, Ray Liotta deserves an Oscar nomination for that.
Wow, that's a bold statement.
It's a supporting actors nomination, and Michael may also get one. It just all depends on how many movies come out and how many nominations there are to pass around.
Some bold statements. I like it. All right. So out of 5, let's get down and dirty here. Out of 5, what 5 stars would you give it, Gator?
2.5.
Got it. Okay, that's fair. Listen, this got graded with a curve for me. Like they could do no wrong. They just had to do some jokes. Like they had to just not F it up, and they kind of did. And I landed at 2.5 stars too. I'm a little underwhelmed. I think you were generous in your interview. I'm going to put review. I'm going to put that link below. And so how can our audience find you? I put a link below to your site, to your page as well. How can our audience find you, Gator?
Gator McCluskey Reviews. If they go there, then please subscribe and check out some of my videos. I do a I do some movie reviews, but I also work these documentaries, and I I try to be funny. I try to be light. I have one of the things on there that if you watch anything I've done, I do the top 10 worst sequels of all time. And I've been getting good feedback on it, but I think it's funny. I really enjoy that kind of humor. I have a sick sense of humor, and I don't have any desire to do the top 10 best anything. I like doing the top 10 worst, because to me, there's nothing that funny about the best movies, right? And I get a kick out of making fun of the films that disappoint me. So
I love it.
But I also like to study classics. So I do Young Frankenstein, for example, is one of my favorite movies. I do like a mini documentary on Young Frankenstein, and I love movies from the 70s and the early 80s. That's like my time of growing up where I really appreciated film. So I'm working on A Dog Day Afternoon, which is another one of my favorite films, a documentary, and and continuing with the Burt Reynolds stuff, and doing an occasional movie review of something that like Sopranos and James Bond, that jumps out to me. And now that the theaters are opening up again, and hopefully we don't get hit with another round of shutdowns, and these movies do okay. The Sopranos movie just absolutely tanked. It came out this.
I'm at 2.5. Well, I don't know if watching it in the cinema and dropping to me and my fiance $45 all in, probably more nowadays with all the crap. Will that bring it up another point? I just don't know. Like, you're at 2.5 in the movie theater, so probably maybe watch it again to see if I picked up or missed something. But I'll probably watch it from the comfort and safety of my own home.
Like I said, to me, it's just it's a matter of focus, being focused in a theater. Getting the best possible picture, the best possible sound. I mean, let's be honest, there are people out there watching this movie on their phone while they're on a bus, I mean, and it's unfortunate, and it's unfair to the filmmakers, because they shoot these things with, incredible equipment, and, and some people just watch it on the go. And that's the world we live in. But, the sound, I'll tell you, the Bond movie that I saw, was the sound in that movie. I saw it in a Dolby theater where the seats actually have subwoofers in them and rattle. But just the whole experience technically was amazing. By the time you watch that movie, you want to go visit all of these places in the world that you can't afford to visit, and it's something that you can't watch on your phone, and you see people doing it. It's frustrating, but would the Many Saints of Newark be that much better if you'd had seen it in the theater? Not now. I think now it's resonated with you on your viewing. I don't think it's going to improve on it, but I think the first viewing is really important. If I could suggest anything to anybody, try to go to the movies to see these things one time, and then if you like it, or if you're unsure, rewatch it at home. That's fine. But you really need that initial presentation that the filmmaker intended for you to see it a certain way, and we're not seeing it that way. Most people aren't. So
great point. So check out Gator McCluskey. We're going to put a link to his review, a link to his page. We really appreciate you coming on the Armchair MBA. We're kind of reorganizing here, if you will. It's a relaunch podcast. I think you're going to be okay in the comments, because I knew you were a little more complimentary in your review, but I think you'll be okay. Some good guys who watch the show, and thank you.
I can take it, man. I could take it. I'm from New York.
You're from New York, so it don't matter. All right, buddy. Be good, and thank you for being on the Armchair MBA, my friend.
Thank you, and good luck with the channel.
Thank you, buddy.